their idea of journalism is sort of digging up facts to defend whatever that is.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. And not looking at things objectively.
There's
a very clear narrative, and you have to push that narrative.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And when it changes, you don't say a goddamn thing. When the science changes and when new information comes out that refutes everything you've said in the past, you just shut the fuck up and keep moving.
Right. They do that, and they shouldn't do that because again, it's another thing that loses you faith with audiences, right?
Yes.
Like, and this is another thing that drives me crazy about this propagandistic model of media, is that it, in addition to being wrong, it doesn't work, right?
Yeah.
Like propaganda, it only goes so far. You actually need people to trust you, and trust is a complicated thing. You have to have a relationship with your audiences, and audiences will not believe you if they see you making a mistake and then they see you not owning up to it.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Which is why, you and I both have had this experience of saying something wrong and then coming out and saying, you know what, I screwed that up. Like I did that. I made a really bad call about the beginning of the Ukraine war. I didn't believe the reports that were coming out. They sounded wrong to me. And I kind of wrote a sarcastic column about how this is ridiculous. Everyone's being so credulous about this. And then, of course, the invasion happened shortly after that, and I looked like an idiot. But you got to come out and say after that, you know what?
I fucked up.
I fucked up. I was over my skis on that thing. And if you don't do that,
they never trust you.
They never trust you.
And they shouldn't trust you.
Right.
And you should. When you fuck up, you should own it. It's
right.
like you're just a human being, and you're talking about things in real time. Especially when you're doing a podcast, you're literally thinking out loud publicly.
Right.
And it becomes permanent record.
Right. Right.
Good luck with that.
Yeah. No, I don't know how that's got to be, incredibly difficult to, you're not even sitting there doing what I do, is just choosing my words carefully and typing them, right? Like,
a lot of times I'm intoxicated. It's a fucking good solid amount of the time. Yeah. No, it's but that's also why people like it, because they feel like you're really hanging out with them, having a conversation, because that's what it sounds like. Right. Because it is what it's like. I mean, it's like the same way I talk to you. You and I could be at dinner right now.
Right.
And we would probably be having the same conversation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And people can pick up on that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that, I always thought that was, one of the reasons that your show is so successful is that people don't detect that there's something staged about it, but you can see that so clearly in every other kind of media now, that, it's just, I don't know.
It's a dirty business.
It's a dirty business.
It's a dirty business, and it's dirty for them too. Because if they could be free, they would like to. I think almost everybody would like to just be able to be themselves and have their own opinions and be able to express themselves and be able to think about things openly. But when you are working for a major news organization and you have an enormous paycheck every week that comes to you, if you keep this thing going, you have to keep this charade going, keep this con going. You're going to keep going. You're going to be Rachel Maddow. And I love the fact that the way you compared Rachel Maddow to Bill O'Reilly. You're like, it's the same person.
Right.
It's the same thing. It's just one's doing it with progressive values and one's doing it with right-wing values. Right. And you were really the first person who's a liberal guy to openly say that. I'm like, yes, yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah, no, it's you identify an audience, you give them stuff they want to hear, you do it over and over again, rinse, repeat, blah blah blah, and look, that's a dangerous pattern that you can fall into when the business works the way it does, but people do it, and the converse of that is that if you work in these organizations, and this is something that, believe it or not, Noam Chomsky wrote about 1 million years ago in a book called Manufacturing Consent, like you see coming up in the business that when somebody tries to buck the system and tries to force through an unpopular story or refuses to write a story that's not true, or does anything that the editors don't like, they see that those people are moved out of the business sooner rather than later, right? They just sort of end up being washed out with reputations for being difficult people. Chris Hedges is somebody who comes to mind, right? Like they kind of just squeeze you out. There's no particular thing that happens, and that just sends signals down the ranks of people in journalism that if you want to get ahead, just keep doing the shit that we want you to do. You don't have to be a genius to figure out what that is. Just keep doing it, and you'll eventually rise up through the ranks, and before you know it, you'll have your own show, or you'll be running a desk, but you won't have anything to say because early on you'll have made the decision to abandon your individuality. That's the key to the whole thing, is that it's not people who are making these big decisions to sell out when they're 50. They make the decision to sell out when they're 22 or 23. Like at the very start, when they first see it and they understand how the business works and they start climbing, that's when they sell out. So by the time they get to be that, older, it's who they are.
Well, you see it in politics too, right? Like you see it like people like AOC, who starts out as this really kind of inspiring story. Girl wore her shoes out campaigning, just walking around, going door to door, and now she's cozying up to the likes of Nancy Pelosi, and they're all in this weird sort of group together making decisions, and people don't like it. People don't like it. They see where it's going. Like, oh, if you want to be president, you have to go down this road, and you're going down that road.
Exactly.
And you're going to be that lady that presses the button that drops the bombs. You're going to be that lady that sends the fucking drones out and finds some way to justify the fact that it kills 90% civilians. You're going to be that person, because that's where that person starts. You start out idealistic. You start out this person who's very progressive and really wants, to help lower income families, and really wants to help inner city schools, and really wants to help all. And then along the way, you get indoctrinated into the system and you figure out how everything works. This is how you have to do it. This is how you play ball. This is the bill you have to sign. This is what you have to get in on. In order to get this, we have to do that. In order to get that, we have to do this. Mm-hmm. And next thing you know, you're a fucking politician.
Right.
And you're the Speaker of the House, and you're doing insider trading and making hundreds of millions of dollars because everybody else is doing it.
Right.